Throughout the history of Top Gear, almost every country and stereotype was subject to banter, which resulted in frequent controversies. However, no incident in the show's history was as politically and culturally charged as their Patagonia special in 2014. What began as a seemingly routine special turned into a diplomatic crisis, leading to violent protests, emergency evacuations, and heated debate. At the heart of this firestorm was a seemingly innocuous number plate, H982FKL. For many Argentinians, this wasn't just a random set of characters, but a deeply offensive reference to the Falklands War of 1982, a conflict which remains an open wound in the country's history. But given the show's own history and track record for what some consider offensive jokes and skits, was it an unfortunate coincidence or a deliberate poke at a country's history? To understand the intensity of the backlash, it's crucial to understand Argentina's historical and emotional ties to the Falklands Islands, or as Las Malvinas as they're called in Spanish. The islands are located in the South Atlantic and have been a source of dispute between the UK and Argentina for nearly 2 centuries. In 1982, Argentina's then military dictatorship launched an invasion on the Falklands, seeking to reclaim the territory from British control. This led to a 10-week conflict in which British forces successfully repelled Argentine military, reclaiming the islands but at the cost of hundreds of lives. 255 British and 649 Argentine to be exact. For Argentina, the loss was not just a military defeat, but a national tragedy, compounded by the fact that many of the fallen were young conscripts. To this day, the sovereignty of the Falklands remains a highly sensitive and politically charged issue in Argentina. Given this context, anything that appears to reference the war, especially in a manner that is perceived as mocking or celebratory, is always going to be a bad idea. In 2014, Top Gear planned to film the Christmas special featuring a road trip through Argentina and Chile, more specifically Patagonia, which is basically the tail end of the countries. As usual, the trio chose a car within the requirements of having a V8 engine to celebrate the 60th anniversary of the small block V8. Hammond chose a Ford Mustang Mark I, and May opted for a Lotus Esprit. Meanwhile, Jeremy opted for a Porsche 928 GT, a car that is incredibly meaningful to him. This is mainly because when he first tested the car back in 1994, it transported him to see his dying father in hospital.
See, back in 1994, I was living in London. I got a call one evening from my mum to say that my dad was desperately ill in a hospital in Sheffield and I needed to get there as quickly as possible. I'd just taken a chicken out of the oven and I thought, well, I'll take that for my mum because she won't have eaten. Ran outside and I had a 928 on test that week. And when I arrived in Sheffield, the chicken was still warm and my dad was still alive. In fact, he died half an hour later. And the truth is, if I hadn't have been driving a car which could sit quite happily at 170 miles an hour, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to say goodbye to my dad. So as far as I'm concerned, the 928 is all right.
On the 17th of September 2014, the team set off their journey from Bariloche, intending to film scenic drives through Patagonia and then ultimately play a game of car football in Ushuaia with the local Argentinians. However, as the filming progressed, Argentine viewers and media outlets began noticing something peculiar: Clarkson's number plate, which to them seemed like an obvious reference to the Falklands War, and led to the number plate spreading rapidly across Argentina. Once they crossed into Chile, they made their way to Punta Arenas, where in usual Top Gear fashion, they had to modify their cars so they could carry the materials and resources to build a car football stadium in the city of Ushuaia, a place with strong historical ties to the Falklands War. On the 28th of September, they set off to Ushuaia. However, during this time, the backlash of the number plate was intensifying, as the Argentine media picked up on the story, accusing the BBC and Top Gear of deliberately provoking the country. This story, of course, then went viral across the internet, causing protests to form in cities that Top Gear planned to drive through its route. Once actually in Ushuaia, the situation became critical when veterans and locals officials confronted the team, demanding an explanation and apology. The production crew then tried to defuse the situation, insisting that the number plate was purely coincidental and had not been chosen with any political intent. What was meant to be a symbolic handshake of peace through car football quickly became a DEFCON 1 scenario. This led to the number plate on the Porsche being replaced and the trio being forbidden to be seen, hiding out in their hotel room in Ushuaia, while the production team assessed their next move.
They want us as people out.
We haven't had any animosity whatsoever in the whole trip. Everybody's been perfectly decent, very charming.
All we wanted to do was come here and play football. And what's happened is...
The producers said it would take 24 hours to organise the departure of such a large crew. But even though the police were present, the veterans said a mob was on its way.
Given an ultimatum by the locals to leave or be skewer meat, Jeremy, James and Richard, along with a few younger female crew members, got a flight to Buenos Aires, where they would then catch a flight back to the UK.
The trouble is, we thought that we were the magnet for all that because we're the presenters, and it was whatever this perceived slight was, it must have come from us. So we ran away to the airport.
How did you do that? Did you all get in one car and flee?
Yeah, to be honest. Obviously, the crew have a huge amount of kit. A lot of it is mounted in the filming cars, the Land Rovers that we use. We hire those locally, but it's a day's work to dismantle.
I'm sure it is, yeah. It must be a big support crew you've got.
On the 2nd of October, after planning an escape route out of Argentina, the production crew was forced to leave Ushuaia. With 4 tons of equipment loaded into the cars, the 31-strong film crew headed out of the town with a police escort, which would take them 184 miles to the border town of San Sebastian, where they cross over into Chile. Along this trek, the Top Gear convoy would then be followed by protesters and then attacked by angry mobs with rocks as they made their way through towns.
Yeah, everybody just remain cool. The main thing is just to keep this convoy rolling.
Then, just outside the town of Tolowin, the police told the convoy to pull over and prepare for an attack.
With the cars and crews taking damage, they abandoned the Porsche, Ford and Lotus, along with another alleged spare number plate inside, which read BE11END. With no phone signal and the crew fearing for their lives, they ditched the main road and went towards the river border they used earlier in the special, eventually crossing back into Chile. On the 4th of October 2014, Jeremy Clarkson tweeted a series of tweets. All TG crew now safely out of Argentina. I just got back to UK, horrified to see so many newspapers have the story completely wrong. The number plate was a coincidence. When it was pointed out to us, we changed it, as in pics this morning's Mail show. On Christmas Day, when the special aired, Jeremy Clarkson tweeted, "Happy Christmas to everyone, except the Tierra del Fuego people of Argentina. You lot can sod off." After the show aired, the debate continued whether the number plate was on purpose or not. It was mainly about the question of the chances of having that specific number plate on that car. During 2 separate interviews, James and Richard cleared it up from their perspective.
So we bought the cars, bought them in the UK, and all this COD arithmetic about the chances of having that
What
number
is it you
plate
found out,
work.
Rich?
The chances of coincidentally buying a car with that registration to take to Argentina, 13 million to 1.
You see, I would contend that that is nonsense, because that is true of any number plate you choose, because they are all unique. That is the point of a number plate.
But this one was
And
particularly unique, though.
it's actually meaningless. Now, you have to remember, all the cars that we chose are extremely rare. Jeremy wanted a 928 GT. It's a car he's very keen on and has been for a long time, but he wanted the manual, which is a very rare car in Britain in right-hand drive. Now, we found 2 for sale. One of them was considerably better than the other one, which is the one we bought. So in actual fact, because they all wear the registration numbers they've had from new, and there's nothing you can really do about that, the chances of buying that car were actually 1 in 2.
But surely, because of the meticulous planning that goes into it, someone would have gone, oh, crikey, this is a bit odd. That says that, and we're going to be driving through. I know you're going out to Patagonia, but...
I mean, we weren't making a programme about Argentina specifically. We were making a programme about Patagonia, which is Argentina and Chile. We were definitely not going to talk about the Falklands War. The only thing we did acknowledge that we would end up in Ushuaia, where there is a certain amount of resentment towards the British, because that's where the Belgrano sailed from and so on. But we weren't going to mention that. I mean, we do muck about, but we're not going there to mock people about their war casualties or anything like that. Now, the issue with the number plate, we didn't spot. I didn't spot it, and I do crosswords, word games, number games,
because
and all the rest
as
of
men,
it.
you often look at number plates and you try and make letters from them, don't you? And surely someone
Or
on
rude
that crew
words,
must have
yes.
gone, crikey, we've got to be really careful, we've got to get rid of this number plate. It says...
But it doesn't say anything.
I don't think it's the number plate that's the issue, really. It's what happened following it. We were making a film about how great it was because it was gorgeous. And then we got a tweet about a week into a several-week shoot that pointed out that the number plate on one of the cars, you could put down, I mean, you can. I mean, I can see it.
Yeah.
So we all ran cold. Oh, no, that's bad. Because we were going right down to Ushuaia, right the very south, where there's still feeling about it. I mean,
Yeah, of
it was a
course.
war. People died on
Yeah.
both sides. So we thought, oh, good. Well, if that's going to cause offence, we'll take it off.
Yeah.
But that wasn't enough, and then they threw rocks at us, and we ran away.
On the day, the producer of Top Gear and the Grand Tour, Andy Wilman, recently spoke on former Stig, Ben Collins' podcast, where he re-clarified they didn't do it on purpose.
We're about to get our heads kicked in and our lives are going to be in danger, we know that. I mean, obviously Argentina was a really fractious moment. That was the one moment when the crew were looking at me going, did you really do that number plate, genuinely? Because we're about to get our fucking heads kicked in and our lives are going to be in danger, we know that. All for a silly joke you did. And I was like, we did not do that number plate.
Come on.
To this day, until the day I die.
Come on.
On my children.
No one really seems to know what exactly happened to the abandoned cars, and although the BBC did attempt to recover all 3 of the cars, they were unsuccessful. It's rumoured that after they were seized by local police, they were put in storage and then destroyed in 2017. But this wasn't even the first time in Top Gear history that they had been chased out of borders. In episode 3 of the 9th season, the presenters and the entire crew were chased by hillbillies out of Alabama's state borders. After writing statements on their car they knew would cause aggro in the Deep South. Stuff like NASCAR sucks and man love rules. But the difference is, with the Patagonia controversy, coupled with other issues, contributed to tensions between Clarkson and the BBC, culminating in his dismissal from Top Gear the following year in 2015. If you want to find out exactly how this happened, you can watch this video that I made. The fact that this TV show was big enough to cause political unrest in a country is pretty crazy in itself, which kind of reiterates the fact how much the BBC has declined. But does Clarkson and Top Gear have a track record of loving history and being slightly offensive? Yes. Have they made previous gags about number plates on Top Gear? Yes. So make of it what you will and come to your own conclusions. Thank you so much for watching this video, it really does mean a lot to me. Make sure to follow me on all of my socials at Phat Mima, like, subscribe and comment below what you want to see next.